Hey everyone, I'm Lily, and tonight, ignore my extremely frizzy hair because this is after about 30 minutes of working at it and it refuses to cooperate, so cooperate already, hair. I really need to get it cut, but my hair is not the topic of this video. Although I could spend a whole video complaining about my hair, but today I'm just gonna be kind of like talking about my general thoughts so far on DnD 5e. DnD 5e has been out for four-ish years now. I've been playing it about a year and a half now, like consistently. I played in terms of campaigns and stuff. Before that, I've played like one-off like things and that, and I've been familiar with the rules since before launch. I did participate in like the beta and stuff like that. But, yeah, no, I feel like I have a bit of an experience now to, like, actually talk about how I feel about 5th edition, how it compares to other editions I play. When talking about this, I am largely going to be comparing this to 3.5 and Pathfinder, which aren't necessarily, like, the, ones I play necessarily the most. Actually, the edition I play most other than 5e right now is actually 4e, but comparing against 4e isn't actually all that useful. 4e is really its own beast, and it's so different from the other ones, and 5th edition is much closer to like 3.5, even though it takes a lot of things from there. So it's going to be kind of what I'm comparing it against. But yeah, I mean, I will bring up 4e because I love bringing up 4e because I love 4e. Yeah, so 5th edition D&D. If you don't know what it is, why did you click on this video? Or if you're coming here from my channel, how do you not know what it is if you've been following my channel? Well, hello, mysterious person who doesn't know what Dungeons & Dragons is. May I suggest that you go look up what Dungeons & Dragons is. 5th edition is the most recent edition. And I will be going a bit in depth and like actually talking about some stuff in there. Well, that's one of my comments is that there's not much depth to go into, but let's get ahead of myself. So, you know, but let's just jump right into it. Let's just talk, let's start positive. What are my positive feelings towards 5th edition? One is, and honestly, this is the hallmark feature of 5th edition, and honestly why it's really been able to explode as a system among not just like enfranchised nerd communities, but really like make D&D explode into the mainstream. And that is, it is incredibly simple to learn and play. There's a lot of complexity there because like it still is Dungeons and Dragons, and it's more complicated than your average board game, or honestly even than your like average RPG video game. There's more that you need to know about. That said, it is much less complicated still than like almost a lot of other of like the mainstream RPG systems. There are simpler RPG systems that are meant to be like very much introduction systems for either people who have no gaming experience or like children, but those aren't really kind of thing. And there are some that are even more simple than just this one, than 5th edition. But 5th edition is honestly, I think that's 5th edition's greatest strength. It's easy to teach to new people. It's a great point for new players to jump into D&D. Likewise, it's very easy to DM. Like honestly, the worst part, the absolute worst part of 3.5 and Pathfinder, is that I love playing 3.5 and Pathfinder, but it is a hell to DM. There's so much, it's a high barrier to entry. You have to know so much about everything. Monsters you have to actually like really like pretty much study beforehand, unlike 4th and 5th edition where you can just look at a stat block and be like, okay, I actually know how to run this monster. But and it's just like, it's terrible to DM. While 4th edition did a lot to streamline the DM's role and make it a lot easier to play a dungeon master as the dungeon master. 5th edition took a lot of those lessons and carried them over, and it's also very easy. It's honestly, I think, one of the first editions where if you have like a group of 4 people or 4 or 5 people and none of you have played D&D before, I think it's one of the first editions where it's honestly not that much work to jump into DMing blind as it is to be a player blind. Sure, you have more reading to do, so you have to like read like 2.5 books as opposed to just 1, and you might have to do a little bit more work, but honestly, it's if you're having to jump in blind, it's a great system for that. And another thing that's really good about it that they carried over from 4th edition is it's much more balanced. One problem about 3.5 and Pathfinder is that they are hilariously unbalanced, where it's very easy to make just like a terrible or unplayable character, or just like a super like lopsided party in terms of power level and things like that in those editions. Well, 5th edition, as long as you're the same level, or even if you're not exactly the same level, things are to be a lot more balanced with each other. And yeah, so it's just that it's kind of like also 4th edition had this too, where it's like 4th edition, you had to try to make a bad character. It's the same way in 5th edition, which makes it a lot more new player friendly. Like when I'm like teaching a new player like 3.5, it's just like, okay, either we can have a fun if the rest of the group is experienced. So like if it's all new group, I don't do this, but it's like if the rest of the group is experienced and I'm teaching a new player 3.5, I honestly say look up builds online. Like, don't maybe not follow it, but you're going to want to look at third-party resources to actually put together a decent character, and that is at least on par with the other, or close to being on par with the other characters. And that's not good, but 5th edition, you don't have to do that on. That said, on the flip side, there's a problem with that. And honestly, that's my list of where my positives of 5th edition go. Like, that said, all of the positives of playing Dungeons & Dragons is great. I, love D&D. I didn't make a YouTube channel that was, largely based on D&D because I didn't like D&D. I love playing D&D. But, it really gives a nice, streamlined way to give that experience. It's a great way to bring new people into the game, which is awesome and amazing. But this is what I'm going to go into. And that's my problem with 5th edition D&D, is that it does not offer nearly enough complexity and depth for long-term players. It's very simple. It's very streamlined. All the classes are very much on rails. The fact that you maybe have 1 or 2 main path options within your class, and that's all the choices you make for their class. The fact that a lot of the power your character has, and special abilities and stuff, has been moved from the feat system to the character class, which means you have to really messily go into multi-classing and stuff if you want to do any sort of weird fringe builds and things like that. It's just brewing is so much harder in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons than it ever was before. And obviously that is a trade-off for things being very balanced, where on one hand, the more options you give players, that's harder it is to balance around it. And obviously there aren't words that mean things. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a few reasons that this happened, why there's so few. Because, okay, things that define your character. Okay, race and class. Every edition has that. Actually, we're not going to talk about Red first edition, but you have your race and class. That's here. A lot of the same decisions, and that's a good way to define your character. But in many ways, and also when I say defining your character, I mean mechanically defining your character. Like background and flavor and re-flavoring things. That's all great, and I run very story-driven games where, honestly, that's the most important thing about it. But at the end of the day, I'm also really love the mechanics of this, and honestly, 5th edition and my disappointment with 5th edition on this front has kind of really made me realize how much I appreciated the mechanics of D&D, where like a lot of the time I dismissed the complexity and rules and stuff beforehand, but I've really shifted back into, wait, no, I actually really like that. Maybe not quite on the level of like 3.5 in Pathfinder, because that gets very complex. But 5th edition is like the pendulum has swung too far for me as an enfranchised player. But you have race and your class are the same. And that's fine. But then, so skills, they took the 4th edition route of just being like, you're trained in a skill or you're not. And, you know what, I don't mind that. Keeping track of skill points was a pain in 3.5 in Pathfinder. And while it had cool things where you could, like, be a jack of all trades or you could really specialize in one thing, it does make just math a lot easier. It's a lot less numbers to keep track of. That said, it does lead to, like, some lack of versatility when leveling up. But honestly, that's not the end of the world. But then the next thing is feats. The fact that they have now tied feats to ability score increases has been put feats in such a weird spot where every time you take a feat, like coupling these together, if you don't know, feats are a optional rule set in 5th edition, where essentially whenever you would get an ability score increase where you'd raise 1 or 2 of your stats by 2 points total, you could instead take a feat. So now they're coupled with the power level of getting an ability score increase, which is a very powerful thing to do, and link them with. So they all have to be comparable to be worth taking with that ability score increase. There's this very, which is kind of dangerous in a lot of ways. It's both easy because it anchors its value very strictly, like a feat is equal to +1 in everything a stat cares about. But at the same time, it's just like, that is a very specific point. And that's frustrating to me because it's just that it's really limited what they can do with feats. Because feats in almost every prior edition since 3.0, and that was back like a good almost 18 years ago, it's been feats. That's how you customize your character. That's like the bread and butter of like Buildcraft and things like that. And they're really just not there. Like all the supplemental projects they've put out really don't expand on feats. All of the expansions of classes and stuff are all based on new paths for classes, which are still, again, you kind of choose once and you're kind of railroaded into that path for your class, which is really, it feels bad for me, where I feel like I make a handful of choices at character creation, and then I kind of just follow that path until I've like leveled up. But continuing on the other things, okay, what's other parts that you define your character? Okay, they have the whole background thing, which are kind of like a more a simplified version of traits from Pathfinder. Traits were a thing where they were kind of like mini feats that kind of help define your backstory. And you know what, like, backgrounds do the same thing. They give you some proficiency, some skills. I like kind of like having some skills outside of your class so you can like kind of mix and match. Overall, I quite like backgrounds. I think they're a cool thing, but ultimately not that central to any sort of Buildcraft or brewing. They're more there for like mechanical tie-ins for your story, which is great. And I'm all for that. But Yeah. And then, but like the last part of kind of like your build in classical D&D, especially 3.5, Pathfinder, and 4th edition, is magic items. And the philosophical change of how they handle magic items in 5th edition, I think I like it. It's a cool new feel. Where in 3.5 in Pathfinder and 4th edition, magic items, like, you could play with more 5th edition-esque types, but magic items were really much like your bread and butter. Like, you would get a magic item every level or two, and you would like accumulate them, and you'd fill out all your slots of different magic items, and what magic items you did really helped fill out your build and complemented the rest of your abilities and your feats and your stats and stuff. And there were these cool prizes and things like that, but they were still pretty common. Where in 5th edition, magic items are either like magic items that have like distinct stat bonuses and things like that are far and few between. They're supposed to be like really capstone, like full adventures, like over the course of an entire like arc, you might get 1 or 2 magic items. And like they're a handy boost, but by no means character defining. And otherwise, a lot of other magic items are just like cool, like kind of like plot things, like look at this bottle which can, if you put into it, like it casts purify food and drink and stuff, which is cool, but a lot of the magic items they suggest are like the minor wondrous items in previous editions. From a storytelling and philosophical point of view, I'm fine with magic items being rare, and magic items being this like just a tone dart a scale back part of your character's prowess. Like, I'm a fighter, I'm really good with the sword, and sure, I might get a magic sword at the end of a quest that might make me slightly better at my sword, but that sword doesn't define what I do. It isn't part of it. I'm not trying to get out like the synergizing armors and things like that. And that's okay. We're having the magic items be these like rare and mystical artifacts that are their own cool thing from a story point of view. But at the same time, the fact that you've taken that out, you've taken away, and you've taken out feats, you've kind of taken like 2 of the like keystones of build defining. And that's really frustrating to me as a like kind of someone who wants to brew and come up with new builds and things like that. Honestly, there's 2 places you play D&D. Well, there's 2 different games of D&D that go on. One is the in-game experience, where you are you're playing D&D, you're with the group, you're like going through dungeons, you're slaying dragons, it's Dungeons and Dragons. And you do all that stuff, and that's great. And 5th edition runs that really well. The rules are very streamlined, they help flow. But then there's the other half of D&D. And that is the poring over books at 2 a.m. and figuring out like what magic items you want to get for your character and figuring out what like feats you want, things like that. And that just isn't there for 5th edition. The kind of like outside of session experience, and I understand that like not all people want to do that, especially new players and people who aren't like super enfranchised. But the fact that isn't even an option in 5th edition. In 4th edition, you didn't have to spend a lot of time on your character to level up. Like, okay, level up, I choose my power, I choose my feat, okay, I'm good. But you could, like, spend a lot more time, like, looking ahead, like, figuring out, like, what synergies you wanted. There was a lot of cool buildcraft you can do. And you're just so much more limited in 5th edition about what you can do to explore new options and stuff. And one thing I'm, like, you can make the argument of, like, okay, 5th edition isn't, like, as, like, old as some of the other editions were. And there's a lot more, like, there's time for it to grow. But I have a couple things to that where it's like, 5th edition is already so much smaller than both 3, 3.5, and 4th, and Pathfinder at launch. There are so many less options. Like, yeah, like, 4th edition had less, like, possible like character classes. They didn't have all the core character classes at launch, which people were upset by, but I mean, character classes take a lot more substantial part of the book in 4th edition. But it's like, there were so many more options you could have. There's so many more potential characters you could create at launch in 4th edition. And not to mention 3.5 and 3rd, as opposed to, like, at this one, you just have so few mechanical options, where it's like, okay, what flavor of cleric are you? Are you 1, 2, or 3? And almost all of them have the exact same power set. It's like, obviously, one thing I should mention, that there is, like, balance and, like, spells and things like that, but, and there's, like, customization for casters and things like that. And overall, I do really like how the changes they've made to the spells rules, but that should go in the positive section, where I actually like how they did, like, the whole new spell slot system and everything. I think it was a good change, and kudos to them. But that kind of also goes into, like, I like how the in-game feel, like the actual mechanics of combat, the whole system of advantage was really well done and feels a lot more impactful. Yeah, no, it just, but okay, yeah, so, yeah, but even then, it is an early edition. There's room to expand. But the thing I'm worried about is that they don't even have these systems to expand upon, where, normally, like, when you got, like, a supplemental book, like, the things I wanted to look at, like, I've made this example because it's currently holding up my computer and keeping it from overheating, unsuccessfully because my computer is dying, is Complete Scoundrel. It was all about making scoundrel-type characters. It was a 3.5 supplemental book. And it gave you new prestige classes, which aren't really a thing in 5th edition, although you could see, say, like, the character paths you choose are, like, kind of take the place of prestige classes, and that's fair. And, like, in 4th edition supplements, you got new paragon paths, but it had new feats, new uses for skills, new magic items and mundane items, and some, like, new spells. I don't know if Complete Scoundrel had spells. I think it did. For, like, bards and stuff like that. And there just isn't as much that, like, so far, like, in, not more Grandstone Foes, Xanthar's Guide to Everything, it was essentially, here's a few new paths for all the classes, no new feats. Like, feats are there, and, like, feats they can, like, expand on, but the fact that they're relegated to an optional rule set is kind of weird space. The limited, like, design space, like, the kind of the corner they've painted themselves for design space for, like, having them coupled with ability scores is kind of weird. But it's like, otherwise it's just like, yeah, you can create new magic items, but the game isn't balanced around having tons of magic items. And I guess I'm just concerned about these systems to expand upon and add new stuff are limited, and also just, while the supplements they've put out have been really good and really awesome, they don't give the same depth of character diversity. They make new kinds of characters you can make, but they don't really expand on, like, the existing builds and giving you new options for existing characters and things like that. And that's frustrating to me, that like, out-of-session experience is just not there. It's just one of those things where it's like, if someone invited me to a 5th edition game as a player, I don't think I would be interested. There just isn't, like, I love D&D, I love being in a session, and 5th edition does capture me enough as a DM, because DMs have a lot more going on outside of the session and a lot more planning and things like that. But in terms of the out-of-session stuff for being a player, there just wouldn't be enough to keep me engaged with, like, the mechanical side of my character. Like, I can get into a character, like, lore and roleplay-wise quite easily. I love doing that, and I love that, and honestly, like, I am still very much, like, heavily invested in the roleplay and the lore and stuff like that, but just the lack of mechanical depth is just really frustrating me in 5th edition. And then, one final thought I also had to have, which was kind of, like, weird from, like, kind of, like, the design decision they went, where in 4th edition, they were like, in 3rd edition was all up, and 2nd edition too, was all about like penalties, where like a lot of the feats you would get would just mitigate penalties, where it's like, oh, you won't get -10 while dual wielding, haha, now you only get like -6, and things like that, and like meeting penalties and all that. And in 4th edition they made the design decision of, penalties feel bad. Maybe we should just balance everything to be at a base level without the penalties and just give more bonuses, because that feels better as a player. And that was good, but it's just like, this sounds really stupid when I put it like this, but the numbers in 5th edition are very small. Like, the amount, like, your attack bonuses don't get very high in 5th edition. Like, there isn't the satisfaction of watching numbers go up as much as you level up. Like, the difference in power level is mostly determined by just like new abilities and things like that, which is cool and good. But I don't know, the numbers don't go up enough for me, which is like, I want my high numbers, damn it. So yeah, though, but that's just like a minor complaint. It's just like, oh look, like, you start at a +2 proficiency bonus, and over the course of 20 levels, it'll go up to a +6 proficiency bonus. Ooh, a 4% or 4-point increase. Ooh, which is like, that doesn't feel that impactful. Like I understand, like, balance-wise, it is mechanically the same, and mathematically, it is still kind of like balanced and like things like that. But I don't know, it doesn't feel as good. I'm leveling up, damn it. I want to see larger numbers. I like big numbers. But that's just more personal aesthetic preference for that. But yeah, I think that's about it for kind of like my ramble and things like that. And I just want to close on a positive note, because it has been very negative and kind of like me complaining about the lack of depth and kind of how I'm frustrated with that, is that honestly 5th edition I think is a great step forward. Like, 4th edition, as much as I love it, just 4th edition is well, it is D&D in a lot of senses. It just isn't kind of that there. But 5th edition is really great. It's really great for getting new people in the game. It's really great to learn, and if you just want like a light casual experience that you're not like investing a ton of time in, like for making a one-shot, it's a much easier to like pick up and play and things like that. But I'm worried right now, just like I wouldn't want to play a character in 5th edition, and I'm also worried about the longevity of my attention span with 5th edition. I could definitely see myself in 1-2 years down the road, or at least before 6e comes out, I will definitely probably revert back to 3.5. I'll probably not go back to Pathfinder, because I've been kind of put off by Piazzo as a company, but that's a topic for another day, and I've mentioned it several times, but I probably won't make that video. But if you're curious, ask me on my Discord. Also, I haven't have that shout out. You should join us on the channel Discord. The link is in the description below. We have lots of cool people there, including me. I should say, and there's lots of cool people there, and me. I shouldn't be included in that first group. That's right, I'm not a cool person. I'm a really cool person. Oh yeah. But that's all about it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts, like how you were feeling about 5th edition. Like, are you satisfied with the amount of like customization options? And what are your thoughts on my thoughts and your thoughts and my thoughts? Yeah, well, I hope you have a wonderful night, and may your story smile upon you.